Part 1. The Book Appears. The Restricted Section. It was nearing midnight when Ethan Miller pushed open the heavy wooden doors of Greystone University's library. The rain outside had turned the ivy-covered campus into a shadowed maze of slick cobblestone and shivering trees. Ethan wasn't supposed to be here, not at this hour, but he had a habit of ignoring rules, especially when it came to books. His thesis on Gothic literature was due in less than a month, and he'd exhausted every resource in the public sections of the library. Desperation, mixed with a fascination for the occult, had led him to an old rumor passed down among literature majors, a restricted section in the basement where forbidden books were kept under lock and key. No one was ever seen entering. But Ethan had a plan. Earlier that day, he'd watched the assistant librarian punch in a 6-digit code to unlock the wrought iron gate downstairs. From behind a bookshelf, Ethan memorized the pattern. Now, alone in the silent library, he descended the marble stairs, each step echoing like a heartbeat in the stillness. He reached the gate. His fingers trembled as he entered the code. Click. The gate creaked open, revealing shelves cloaked in shadows, filled with tomes bound in leather, cloth, and materials he couldn't recognize. Most had no titles. Some were chained to the shelves. The air smelled like wax, mold, and something metallic. And then on the farthest shelf, he saw it. A black book, spine cracked, pages yellowed and curled. No title, no author. Drawn to it inexplicably, Ethan pulled the book free. It was cold. As his fingers touched the cover, he felt a prickle up his spine, like static, like something watching him. The book opened on its own. The first page read, "To the one who reads, you are now inside." The text was written in ink so dark it looked fresh, almost wet. Ethan flipped through. The language was archaic, poetic, and bizarrely familiar. The stories inside were twisted, tales of people who vanished, mirrors that reflected other worlds, and doors that led to rooms that didn't exist. It ended on a torn page. There was no final story. There was no last page. 2. Whispers in the dorm. Back in his room, Ethan sat cross-legged on his bed, the mysterious book open before him. His roommate Marcus was gone for the weekend, leaving the dorm unusually quiet. Outside, rain tapped against the windows like fingernails. Thunder rolled across the sky. He flipped through the book again, hoping he'd missed something. But no, still no title, no author, no conclusion. Then the whispers began. At first, he thought it was the wind. But the sound grew clearer. Turn the page. He froze. The book was shut, but the whisper was inside his head or coming from the book. The air in the room turned icy. Ethan touched the spine. The book trembled as if breathing. Suddenly, words appeared on the final torn page, bleeding in like ink dropped in water. Annora lives still. The book is her voice. Read, and she awakens. Ethan recoiled, heart pounding. Who the hell is Annora? He whispered aloud. No answer. Not yet. 3, a familiar name. The next morning, Ethan rushed to the university archives, pushing aside his thesis research. He couldn't stop thinking about the name Annora. It looped in his brain like a chant. Something told him it was important. She was important. Hours passed. Dust clung to his clothes. His eyes burned from squinting at old microfilm and ancient records. Just as he was about to give up, he found her. Annora Blackwell, a brilliant but reclusive 19th century writer and occultist. She had published a single book of dark fairy tales before vanishing without a trace. Rumors swirled that her final manuscript, titled The Book with No End, was cursed. Anyone who read it began to write it, unknowingly adding their life into its pages. It was never found, until now. 4. The night gets stranger. That night, Ethan dreamed of a woman in a black veil, standing in a forest of whispering trees. She held the book open with bleeding hands. "You're the next page," she said. "Write me." He woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. The book was on his chest. New words had appeared. Dreams are drafts. She edits them. The room reeked of iron. His nose bled. 5. Claire gets involved. Ethan confided in Claire Whitmore, his closest friend and fellow lit major. Practical, sharp, and skeptical of anything supernatural, Claire rolled her eyes at first until she saw the book. She held it up, examining the paper. "This isn't pulp or linen. This feels like skin," Ethan said softly. Claire looked at him. Neither spoke. She placed the book down and flipped to the back. "Where's the colophon? No publication info. No printer's mark." "Look at the last page," Ethan said. Claire read the inked sentence. "You are now inside." Then the page below shimmered and changed. Her name appeared. Claire Whitmore, witness and editor's choice. She dropped the book. 6. The library strikes back. The next morning, Ethan was called to the head librarian's office. Mr. Halbrook, a tall, stone-faced man who looked as if he'd aged with the library itself, slid a paper across his desk. It was footage from the restricted section. Ethan on camera. You access materials forbidden to students. I needed it for research, Ethan stammered. Halbrook's eyes narrowed. Some books aren't meant to be read. Ethan tried to return the book. Halbrook shook his head. If it lets you take it, it wants something from you. You'll have to finish the story now. What story? You'll know when the last page turns blank again. 7. The book watches. The next few nights blurred. Every time Ethan closed his eyes, he dreamed of Annora. Sometimes she was crying. Other times she whispered to him, asking to be written back into the world. She began appearing in mirrors, in reflections that didn't match his own. One night he found the book writing without his touch. Sentences formed on their own. Claire began keeping a journal of the events. She started seeing her own handwriting within the cursed book. They both realized the book was absorbing their thoughts, memories, fears. You're not just reading it, Claire said. You're part of it now. Ethan nodded. And it's not done. 8. The mirror clue. Hidden between 2 pages was a scrap of parchment with a sketch of a mirror and a Latin inscription. Finis invenitur in reflexione. Claire translated, the end is found in reflection. That night, they took the book into the campus greenhouse, where a large antique mirror hung on the wall. They stood in front of it, holding the book open. In the reflection, a page turned. One that didn't exist in real life. It was the missing last page. They read the mirror's reflection aloud. To end the story, the writer must erase themselves from it. Only then can Annora return fully. Ethan staggered back. It wants me, gone. No, Claire whispered. It wants to replace you. 9. The blood signature later in Ethan's room, he found a quill on his desk. Not his. The book was open again, and a blank page glowed faintly red. A message appeared. One more page. One more life. That night, Ethan pricked his finger and signed his name on the bottom of the page. As he did, the room went dark, and a woman's laughter filled the silence. Part 2. The pages write themselves. One gone but not forgotten. Ethan woke up on the floor of his dorm, cold sweat clinging to his skin. The black book lay open beside him, pulsing with a dull heat, like a dying ember. His finger still bled slightly from the night before, his name now etched in crimson at the bottom of a previously blank page. He stared at the words above it. With your signature, the story begins anew. Claire was gone, not just gone from the room. Gone from the university. No one remembered her. Not her professors. Not her friends. Not even the registrar. When he asked about her at the administrative building, the clerk frowned at her computer. There's no Claire Whitmore enrolled here, she said. Are you sure you have the right name? Ethan showed her a photo, a picture of him and Claire standing in front of the campus fountain. The woman looked confused. There's only you in this photo. The book had taken her, or rewritten her. 2. Evidence of absence. Ethan returned to his room in a daze. The book waited for him on the desk, exactly where he hadn't left it. New pages had formed, ones he hadn't seen before. And Claire's name was everywhere. Descriptions of her actions, her words, her laughter, even the exact journal entries she had kept. Except in this version, Claire wasn't just a friend. She was the editor, the key that opened the book's gateway. And now she had been absorbed. But why? Why her and not him? He read on, heart pounding, until a chilling line surfaced. The editor must be rewritten so the story can continue. A reader alone cannot finish what she began. The ink moved as he watched, reshaping itself. A new sentence appeared. Next, the fire in the garden. That wasn't metaphor, it was a warning. 3. The fire that night, the Greystone greenhouse, where they'd first glimpsed the mirror page, burned to the ground. Ethan stood among the crowd watching the fire trucks extinguish what little remained. The flames danced in the windows like demonic eyes. Glass shattered. The smell of burning roots, scorched earth, and something sickening, like cooked meat, wafted through the air. Among the ashes, he saw it. The same mirror they had used, warped and blackened but still intact. He rushed forward, ignoring the guards. Reflected in the glass was not his face, but Claire's. Mouth open in a scream, eyes wide in terror. She was still inside. 4. Mr. Halbrook's secret. Ethan had no other choice. He returned to the one man who seemed to know anything, Mr. Halbrook, the head librarian. But when Ethan arrived, the library was dark, locked. He picked the side door lock and crept in. The restricted section glowed faintly, candles already lit, as if waiting for him. And there, among the shelves, was Halbrook. But he was different, pale, sweating, whispering to himself. Ethan approached. You knew this would happen. Halbrook didn't look up. She was the editor. She had the power to shape it. The book feared her control. What do you mean? Halbrook turned hollow eyes to Ethan. The book is a prison, but also a gate. Annora's voice can only return through readers. The editor gave structure. You gave blood. Now it begins. Begins what? Annora is not dead. She is pages and ash and ink. She is becoming again. Halbrook shuddered and fell to the floor, convulsing. Black ink oozed from his mouth, forming letters on the tiles. The librarian had served his chapter. Then his body dissolved into a pool of ink. The book was not just writing itself. It was writing the world. 5. The recurring name. Ethan ran. He didn't go back to his dorm. Instead, he went to the campus chapel, the only place he'd never seen the book appear. It was small, made of stone, and always empty at night. He brought the book with him and forced it shut with twine and tape, wrapping it in layers of cloth. But it didn't matter, because the writing had started appearing in other places. His notebook, his phone, even the whiteboard in the student lounge. Each time the same words, Annora lives in ink. He opened his laptop, hoping to write an email to a professor for help, but the words on screen changed without input. You can't warn them. You are the author now. You write what we give you. And underneath, a signature appeared. Annora Blackwell. 6. The class presentation. Ethan had a literature class the next morning. Against his better judgment, he went. Perhaps a part of him still hoped things would return to normal. They didn't. When it was his turn to present on 19th century Gothic themes, he opened the PowerPoint on the classroom projector. But instead of his slides, the black screen flickered and displayed pages from the book. Pages no one should see. And then the last slide, a live feed of the classroom, everyone's faces distorted, twisted into versions of themselves with ink dripping from their mouths and eyes. The lights went out, screams. When the lights returned, the room was empty, except for Ethan, and on each seat, a single page. He picked one up. It was a description of his presentation. Every word he'd spoken was already written, including his scream. 7. Claire returns, sort of. Ethan returned to the chapel, shaking. He tried to burn the book. It wouldn't ignite. He tried to drown it in holy water. The water turned to ink, and then a voice. Claire's voice, from inside the book. Ethan, please don't let it finish me. Her voice came from the closed book. He cracked it open. A new page had formed. Claire's face was sketched there, eyes wide, mouth sewn shut in ink threads. He flipped the page. Another scene. Claire, in a library not their own, surrounded by mirrors, each one reflecting a different timeline. Some showed her screaming. Some showed her laughing. One showed her becoming Annora. The book had trapped her in a dimension of possibilities. She was not dead, but rewritten, and only one ending could bring her back. But it wasn't clear which. 8. The ink ritual. In a desperate bid to understand the nature of the book, Ethan searched Claire's old journal again. Tucked in the back was a passage she had never read aloud. Ink is blood. Mirrors are doors. The writer's sacrifice closes the gate. He realized what must be done, not just a blood signature, a full offering. He would have to rewrite the book by hand, page by page, on new parchment, sealing the original, a ritual of transcription. But each word copied drained him. With every sentence he felt parts of his memory fading, his childhood, his mother's face, his favorite color. But as he wrote, the new book glowed, and in the mirror in front of him, Claire's stitched mouth began to twitch. He was doing it, but he didn't know how long he could last. 9. The ink bleeds back. After days of copying, Ethan had almost finished. The final page lay blank before him. Claire's face in the mirror was clearer now, less like a sketch, more human. And then, the original book screamed, a high-pitched wail that shattered glass. The room trembled. Shadows poured from the old book's pages, slithering like tentacles. The mirror cracked. The final page began writing itself in Ethan's own handwriting. To finish the book, the writer must forget the truth. Only then will the editor be freed. He hesitated. If he wrote it, Claire might return, but he would forget everything, forget her, the book, himself. He looked at the mirror. Claire was crying. He wrote the sentence, the book snapped shut, and everything went black. Rewritten Ethan Miller now works at Greystone University as a library assistant. He doesn't remember being a student. He doesn't remember Claire Whitmore. He doesn't remember the book. But sometimes, late at night, when the library is empty, he feels drawn to the basement, to a locked gate with a 6-digit code, to a black book with no title. And sometimes the book opens on its own and smiles. Part 3, The Missing Page. 1. A Hollow Life. Ethan Miller now lived a quiet life. He wasn't a student anymore. He worked in the Greystone University library, stacking books, checking inventory, assisting students with reference requests. On paper, he had always worked there, but sometimes when he walked past a certain door in the basement, the one with the rusted keypad and no signage, his heart skipped a beat. He didn't know why. He'd pause, hand twitching toward the keypad, as though some forgotten instinct tried to guide him. 6 digits swam in the back of his brain, just out of reach. Then, with a deep breath, he'd step away. He'd never entered the room, at least not that he remembered, but something inside him felt edited, like he'd once had a chapter of his life torn out. But 2, the editor in the mirror. It started again with the mirror. Ethan was shelving a book in the theology wing when he caught a flicker of movement in the mirror above the fireplace. He turned. Nothing there. But the reflection wasn't quite right. In it, he wasn't alone. A woman stood behind him, pale, eyes wide, mouth stitched shut. She raised one hand, pointed to the cart of books. Ethan turned around. No one. But there, resting on top of the stack, was a single black book, unmarked, uncatalogued. He blinked. When had he shelved this? A chill ran down his spine. 3. Claire's Echo. The moment he touched the book, memory fragments surged through him like a lightning strike. The smell of burning ivy. Claire laughing beside the campus fountain, a scream in the mirror, blood on a page. Claire, he whispered. The name felt sacred, familiar, wronged. He opened the book. New pages had appeared. They described him, now. Not the student he once was, not the writer, but the rewritten Ethan, the one who had forgotten. And Claire, she was still inside. Not just as ink, but as consciousness. Each sentence vibrated with her voice. She hadn't been destroyed, only buried. And the book wasn't finished. Not yet. 4. A book that bled. That night, Ethan took the book home. It pulsed with heat like a living organ. He placed it on his desk and wrapped it in cloth. But it unraveled itself. A new message had formed across the inside cover. Only one page remains, the last page, the true end. And beneath it, a blood-stained corner of parchment had been sewn into the binding. Ethan pulled at the thread. The book shrieked. Ink poured from the spine, crawling across his desk, forming twisted words. If you find it, she returns. If you read it, you vanish. Claire or himself. The choice was near. 5. Halbrook's journal. Desperate, Ethan returned to the restricted section. He didn't need the code. The door swung open before he touched it. Inside, dust hung like smoke. Books leaned against each other like tired soldiers. And in the far corner, beneath a broken lamp, he found something new. A journal. Mr. Halbrook's. The man who had once warned him. The entries were erratic. The handwriting changed midway, becoming more curved, elegant, like a woman's. The last few pages chilled him. I see her when I close my eyes. She speaks through margins. I've tried to seal her, but she finds cracks. The book must be rewritten. Yes, but the final page must not be read. It must be given. A vessel, a living end. The editor is not dead. She waits. And the final words. She chose Ethan. 6. The mirror room. Back in his dorm, Ethan set the book on the floor and surrounded it with candles. He pulled the mirror from under his bed, the one Claire had once appeared in. This time, he saw more. Claire stood on the other side, hands pressed to the glass. Her eyes met his. She mouthed, 1 page. Then she pointed to his reflection. It blinked, but he hadn't. In the mirror, his double held the missing page, torn, stained. It grinned and vanished. The mirror shattered, and the missing page fell to the floor. 7. The missing page. He picked it up with trembling hands. It was simple, typed words centered neatly. The book ends when the author understands they are a story. His name was at the bottom, Ethan Miller. Below it, a handwritten line in red ink. Sign, and you return what was stolen. He knew what it meant. Sign, and Claire would be free, but he would become fiction, a memory, a whisper in margins. 8, the choice. He sat for hours, staring at the page. In one world, he lived, worked, ate breakfast, was safe, but incomplete. In the other, he freed Claire. She was braver, smarter. She had fought harder. He reached for a pen and paused. Claire, he whispered, was I ever real? The book opened itself one last time. A single blank page. He laid the missing page inside, signed his name. The ink bled into the parchment, and the room vanished. 9, a life returned. Claire Whitmore gasped as she awoke in the chapel's mirror room. Her stitched mouth was gone. She looked down. The black book sat closed beside her. On the final page was Ethan's signature fading into the paper. She opened the book. All the entries about her were gone. She was no longer the editor, but she was real, alive. And Ethan? His name existed only once. One final page. She read it, tears falling freely. Let her live. Let her write. Let this be the end. She kissed the page and closed the book. 10, a new beginning. Claire now teaches Gothic literature at Greystone University. Students whisper about her past, but no one knows the truth. No one remembers Ethan, except her. She keeps the book locked in a glass case in her office, unopened, untouched, but sometimes she swears it breathes. And when students ask about the book with no title, she simply says, it ends with a name you won't remember, but I always will.